Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's video. My name is Angel DeSantis. Thank you for being here with me. In this video, I would like to encourage you to do a look back at your 2021 and look at all of the things that you have accomplished. Because a lot of us growing up in an abusive background, we are already trained to look for anything bad that could potentially happen. That is always what our brains are scanning for. And when that is the setup, then what we can tend to miss out on is all the good stuff that we do. And if you're here and you've been here with me for a little while, that means you've done a lot of personal, deep emotional work. And that is worth acknowledging. And your progress is worth looking back and tracking and being really, really proud of yourself for. And if you've never done that before, I invite you to give yourself the gift of looking at all that you've actually done. Because we tend to do a lot better than we see. And this is something that I still struggle with. And it is easier because I come from such a trash background. It is easier to look back and be like, ooh, God, at least I'm not there. But in the moment, when I look back at the last week or the last month, it can be like, I'm in the same place that I was last week, or I'm struggling. I've been struggling with the same thing for months or years, and it can feel really defeating, but that's what your brain is trained to scan for. So with the year coming to a close and with the opening of the next year, I invite you to start looking at all the progress that you've done. Because yes, it's true that maybe you are still struggling with something that you were struggling with 3 years ago, but likely you have made some form of progress that you haven't seen yet. And when you start to track something besides your failures, your brain is going to start to notice something besides your failures. And that can help you to build self-esteem and to start building confidence when you look back and you notice oh, actually, I'm about 3 to 5% better than I was last month, or I'm 3 to 5% better than I was last year. And all of these little milestones start to pile up, and they start to become this mountain of evidence that you can do hard things, that you know how to take care of yourself, and that you're doing good work. You're doing really good things for yourself. And if we never look at that, then we miss it. And then all we will continue to see is what we were trained to see, which is potential danger. And what are we failing at? What are we bad at, and what's the danger? And I understand what that is like, because first of all, if you grew up in a terrible environment, that stuff is useful. It is useful to know where the biggest threat is. It's useful to know what could potentially go wrong, and it's useful to know how to keep yourself safe by not attempting anything. But you're no longer in that situation, so it's very likely that you are doing much better than you think you are. And you can start to look ahead and think, what can I make go right now that I have all this evidence that I can do difficult things and that I can walk myself towards healing? Now that I know that, and when I look at the past, when I look back at the past year or the past 2 years, and I see how far I've come, can I use that to spur me on? Can I use that as evidence that I can do difficult things and I can move myself forward? And then you can think about, okay, what can I do to keep this momentum going? Rather than oh my God, what's next? This year was trash, last year was trash. What sort of trash does next year have? So I think it's really important to give yourself credit. And that is, I think, the thing that people from abusive backgrounds struggle with the most, is we don't actually see anything good in ourselves or anything that we are capable of. But if you're here and you're watching this, that means that you are actively trying to get better. You're here, you're putting yourself through this in the attempt to better how you feel inside and encourage yourself towards mental health. And that is a really courageous act. And it is an act of self-protection, which means that you have a self that you are trying to protect and grow, which is a really actually big accomplishment, especially if you started from a place where there was no self. There was nothing there. And now there's something there that you are trying to protect and nurture and grow. So acknowledging that, I think, is really important. And if you haven't yet begun a practice of looking at all of the things that you've done and giving yourself encouragement and praise for it, then that is the thing that I invite you to take into the new year, is the ability to notice all the good that you've done for yourself. And as a byproduct of doing good for yourself, you will be able to do good for other people. And doing good for other people isn't the driver, but it is the natural, I think, the natural process that once you have healed yourself and been kind enough to yourself, it kind of naturally starts to spill over onto other people. So find all of the good that you do for yourself. I encourage you to bring that with you into the next year. And if you have any sort of ritual, and for me, the quote ritual that I do for the end of the year is I'm just going to look back at all the good things that happened in each month, if I can remember them. And thankfully, most of us have phones, so we can go through and remember. But I'm going to look exclusively at the good stuff that happened. And then I'm going to look forward to the next year and just know that I want to expand, and I know that I want to have more access to life, which will then require me being less fearful. So my intention for next year is to be less fearful, which means I got to notice the good. So I'm going to notice the good, and I'm going to look forward and set my intention to be less fearful in the coming year. So that is what I'm going to do. I encourage you to have something that you do that allows you to look at all of the good that you've done for yourself, by yourself. Let it empower you. Let it remind you that you are powerful. There's something inside of you that is unbreakable. And that is why you are here. You are healing something inside of you that was unbreakable all along. So continue to see the good that you've done and continue to walk yourself forward into a version of you that is alive and well. So that is my little advice. This will be my final video for the year. I really appreciate everyone being here with me. This was something that happened as a complete surprise, and I do my best to continue to show up. I so appreciate you being here. I appreciate your support. You are part of the good in my life that I'm writing down, is this beautiful, beautiful community. And I have a lot of stuff coming for y'all next year. So I will be less fearful next year, which means you will see more from me. But I appreciate you. Thank you for being with me this year. Find yourself something, a practice of gratitude for all that you've done for yourself, and then something to walk yourself forward. So I hope that this was helpful. Thank you for being here, and I will see you next year.